Good evening. Whoa. Good evening and welcome. Try that again. I'm Tom Little, the moderator of the Shelburne Town meeting. I'd like to call to order what we think up here at the head table is the 230th annual town meeting. At least we know that we are working off of our 230th annual town report. I'd now like to call on Boy Scout Troop number 602 to present the colors and the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all please rise?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you would please remain standing, David Connery is now going to lead us in our national anthem. Thank you, and I'd like to recognize the members of Troop 602 who participated in the presentation of the colors: Tom Lyons, Drew Bewley, John Curley, Anders Erickson, Vincent Cataloni, Matthew Connor, Brendan Hocko, Fisher Irwin, Dan Knight, Garrett Grundling, Garrett Potmeyer, Andrew Slaughterbeck, Alden Luft, Will Kellogg, Carson Webster, and Senior Patrol Leader Matthew Ireland. And again, many thanks to David Connery for adding a special touch to the presentation. I'd now like to invite the Shelburne Town Poet Laureate Rick Passett to come up and read a poem he has written for this occasion.
Wow. Good evening. And I don't know if you've heard or not, but I got a second term. I truly thank you all for this opportunity to serve my community. Tonight, I have written something that's dear to my heart. It's to Chief Jim Warden. It's called To a Friend, from the town of Shelburne. There are many things about you that folks came to trust and know. Your love of this community, our grateful hearts we bestow. You always had a funny tale to bring laughter to our day. You could settle those in distress in a firm yet calming way. For 30 years, you gave beyond the call to serve and protect. From people to dogs, you were there to resolve abuse and neglect. With wisdom and understanding, controlling situations, with a compassion in your heart to avoid confrontations. We wish you all the very best on life's journey as you go. You will forever be a friend, and one we are proud to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Great job, as always. As I do every year, I'd like to note whom the town has dedicated the annual town report to. And this year, it's dedicated to retired Police Chief Jim Warden, a dedicated public servant who truly loved and loyally served our town. And I'd also like to add that in the inside cover of the town report, the town is also recognizing 2 town employees for 50 years of service each. Paul Goodrich, the Highway Department and Road Commissioner, and Cullen Bullard, Fire Department. Let's give them a round of applause. With me here at the head of the assembly is Diana Vachon, our town clerk. There'll be more introductions later, but to my right are the select board members, including Gary Von Stange, the chair. Later on, we'll be hearing from Dave Connery, the school board chair. Joe Colangelo, our town manager, is here. Joe, is there anyone among the town staff or employees here tonight that anyone on the head table would like to acknowledge or introduce?
Frankenberg, our finance director, is here. Chief Ouimet, Assistant Chief Goodrich from the fire department. A number of the firefighters are here as well. See Bob Lake, who's on our police department, and a constable, a health officer, emergency management director, and a few other things is in the back. And I apologize if I've missed a few, but
okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
I do also want to, sorry, Tom, recognize a new employee who's also a town resident. Betty Jean Bogue is, I believe, here as well today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank those who've worked this afternoon to set things up. Bob Miller, Brad Leahy, Bart Martson. We have the VCAM crew here tonight: Elizabeth Rosano, Shanice Crawford, Jude Domsky, Jean-Luc Sepke. And I'm going to get some of these names from Joey Palumbo, Art Hines, Eric and Lauren Hertz O'Brien. I'd like to thank again the Mike Ralston and Chelsea Palin from Cucina Antica, who did a terrific job catering our supper. Let's give them all a round of applause. I'd like to thank our House members, Jessica Brumstead and Kate Webb, and State Senators Mike Sorotkin, thanks Gary, and Chris Pearson, who showed up for the post-supper Q&A together with our State Treasurer, Beth Pierce. And there are displays in the hallway that you may have seen on your way in. Take a look at them if you haven't before you leave. Some really interesting work out there from some of our students. Do we have the Doyle polls out there this year? The Doyle polls are out there this year, so if you want to take one of those and leave it behind, Diana Vachon will make sure that that gets over to the Doyle poll staff so that it'll be tabulated. A few rules and protocols about this evening's work. There are some things that we are voting on tonight, and then there are some more things that we're not voting on tonight. When I ask for a vote tonight, please use your colored slips of paper that you should have picked up at the check-in table: green for yes, salmon for no. This year we have only a town meeting. Since there is no longer a separate school meeting. As you may recall, we abolished the standalone school district in 2016, and as I will explain in a little more detail later, the transition out of a standalone school district became effective and final on January 1 of this year. We will have a presentation during other business on the proposed Champlain Valley School District budget, the combined K through 8 and high school budget. Robert's Rules of Order will apply to our this debate tonight. One person alone may have the floor at a time. If you wish to make a point, make a comment, or ask a question, please first be recognized by me and wait until a microphone is handed to you. We have 2 microphones working the field tonight, so it won't take long to get one to you. If you have a question, please phrase it in the form of a question to make it easier to provide you an answer. Please listen respectfully. Treat each speaker as you would want to be treated if you were speaking. If you have a question about parliamentary procedure, the form of a motion, etc., please address your question to me. If there are any votes that are too close for me to call the result tonight, we will either vote by division, i.e. by having people stand for their vote, or by paper ballot, and in that eventuality, I appoint Joanne Bissett and Matt Vachon as tellers. Typically, we have adopted a special rule of order limiting a speaker from the floor to 2 minutes and not permitting a speaker to be heard a second time until all who wish to speak a first time have been heard. If they're seeing no objection to proceeding in that fashion again this year, we will do so. Under the law, if a question is raised that can best be answered by someone here tonight, but who is not a town resident, I will ask if there is any objection to having that person speak for the limited purpose of answering the question. If you have a copy of the annual report with you, you can turn to page 11 for the official warning of this part of this evening's meeting. We have 3 articles to vote on tonight and 4 to vote on tomorrow by Australian ballot. So we'll now proceed into the 3 articles that we will be voting on tonight. And after we complete those, we will turn to the 4 articles, generally speaking, the money items and the election of officers subsequently. Article 1 is to hear and act on the reports of the town officers and the auditor's report for the budgetary period July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. The town officer reports are at pages 34 to 58 of the annual report, and the auditor's report starts at page 59. Are there any questions or comments under Article 1 on any of the town officer reports in the annual report? So we have people here, the town manager and select board members who would be in a position to answer those questions if you have any. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of adopting the reports of the town officers as contained in the annual report, please raise your green ticket. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your salmon card. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article number 1. Article 2, will the voters determine the compensation to be paid to the Select Board for fiscal year 2018-2019? The current salaries established by town meeting vote last year and that have been the same for many, many years are $1,500 per year for the Select Board Chair and $1,200 a year for the other members of the board. This used to be something that was carried forward year to year by vote of the Select Board, and about 12 or 13 years ago it was decided it would be a better practice to have it voted on in the evening, and that is what we are ready to do tonight. Are there any questions? Would somebody wish to make a motion to establish the salaries for the next fiscal year at $1,500 for the chair and $1,200 for the other members? I'm sorry? There is someone who wishes to address the meeting. Could you please introduce yourself, George? And get the mic right up to your It's been moved to set this compensation as the same as the current year, $1,500 for the chair, $1,200 for the other members. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Will you debate it? Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting Article 2, please raise your green cards. Thank you. Those opposed, raise your salmon cards. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've adopted Article 2. Article 3 is to transact any other business that properly will come before the meeting. We will take this up after we have completed the presentations and debate on the other articles up for vote tomorrow by Australian ballot. Article 4 is to elect town officers as required by law. Under the law, this is not subject to questions and debate. I'm simply going to state who is running for which office. I'm sorry, state the offices and who is running for them. Mary Keogh is running for the 3-year term on the Select Board. Jerry Story is running for the 2-year term on the Select Board. Jamie Hines and Chris Boyd are running for the 1-year balance of the 2-year Select Board term. Diana Vachon is running for Town Clerk. Pete Gadju is running for Champlain Water District. Tom Little, myself, is running for Moderator. And Bob Lake is running for Constable. That brings us to Article 5. Shall the town adopt the Select Board's proposed budget of $8,749,307, of which $6,397,010 is to be raised by taxes? We vote on this tomorrow by Australian ballot. The proposed general fund budget starts at page 12 of the town report. The Select Board will now make a presentation on the budget, and for that I will ask Gary Von Stange, Select Board Chair, to come to the podium. And when Gary has finished his presentation, I will take questions and direct them to Gary or to anyone to whom Gary directs them for an answer. Gary?
Well, welcome to the municipal portion of tonight's presentation. I'm Gary Von Stange, the chair for a few more hours. And I'd like to introduce with me, we have Vice Chair Jerry Story, Select Board Member Colleen Parker, and Select Board Member Jamie Hines. Not with us tonight is Select Board Member Josh Dean. In Shelburne, producing the budget is a challenging process, one that takes 9 months. I would like to thank my fellow Select Board members, town staff, our many volunteers, and all residents who chose to participate in this year's process. In particular, I'd like to thank Town Manager Joe Colangelo, Town Finance Director Peter Frankenberg, and Shelburne's Director of Administration, Ann Janda. Ann joined our ranks a few years ago and has dramatically enhanced the budget's overall presentation. And since his start 4 years ago as town manager, Joe has significantly improved not only the budget, but 2 weeks ago, he and his wife played a major role in increasing Vermont's population. On February 13th, Chester Joseph Colangelo. Yeah, it's interesting to note, by the way, that the process for a budget and the birthing process are both 9 months long. As for the budget, we have a Superman in Shelburne. Peter Frankenberg is our Superman. We put Peter's picture up on the screen. His professionalism, his work ethic, his work product, his way of working, the manner in which he interacts with residents and staff is simply spectacular. And let me tell you, he does more than just finance. A couple of years ago, when our library sprung many leaks, and there was an emergency call at 6 o'clock in the morning, Peter Frankenberg answered that call, and Peter Frankenberg went over and cleaned up the library for everyone. He does everything. Under Joe's leadership, Peter's and Ann's able assistance, the town staff has been very professional, well-organized, and cooperative, all which led to an understandable budget that was presented to the Select Board in final form 3 weeks before statutorily required. The town of Shelburne has 3 major budgets. The general fund, also known as the town budget, the water budget, and the wastewater budget. Tonight, we discuss the general fund budget. Water and sewer budgets and corresponding rates are adopted by Shelburne's Water Commission and the Select Board when the Select Board sits in its role as the Sewer Commission. Both of those things are done in June. I want to give a quick mention recognizing the impressive work of our Water Commission, which has saved the town significant money. The Shelburne Water Commission is comprised of 5 members. They are Chair John Schold, Vice Chair Mike Abrams, Mike Regan, Pete Gadju, and my son-in-law Steve Smith. The commission sets policy and the prices of public water delivery to Shelburne residents. A continuous supply of water is purchased from the Champlain Water District. This group, in the last 3 years, has solved the South Tank cell antenna problem. They solved the backup water supply issues at Wake Robin. They solved the transfer of the North Tank to Champlain Water District. They've been involved in the installation of the Spear Street water line. They've been involved in the resolution of emergency storage issues at the Dorset Street tank with Champlain Water District and South Burlington. This is an incredible amount of successful work. I want you to know that our water commissioners have saved the town over these 3 years hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm happy to report that this past week, the Select Board received the town's audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017, from an independent auditor, Sullivan Powers and Company. Sullivan and Powers is not an employee of the town. It is a third party. They are an independent professional auditing company. As part of its report, Powers and Sullivan rendered an audit opinion about the town. An audit opinion is a written statement describing the auditor's independent, unbiased, and qualified evaluation of the accuracy and the completeness of a company's, or in this town, a municipality, financial statements and practices. There are 4 types of audit opinions: an unqualified opinion, qualified opinion, an adverse opinion, and a disclaimer of opinion. Without question, the best one to receive is an unqualified one, also known as a clean opinion. The auditor reports an unqualified opinion if the financial statements are presumed to be free from material misrepresentations. In addition, an unqualified opinion is given over the internal controls of an entity if management has claimed responsibility for its establishment and maintenance, and the auditor has prepared and performed field work to test its effectiveness. I'm happy to report that the town once again received an unqualified opinion from our independent auditors. I'm also happy to report that the town's fund balance increased this year. In addition, the town's sewer fund balance is quite healthy. Accordingly, as determined by a third party, an independent professional auditor, I'm happy to report that Shelburne's finances are in excellent shape. Article 5, what you vote on tomorrow. Shall the town adopt Select Board's proposed budget of approximately $8.7 million, of which $6.4 million is to be raised by taxes? Like all Vermont municipalities, Shelburne's general fund is supported primarily by property tax. In Shelburne, property taxes make up 76% of the total revenue required to deliver our municipal services. Other than property taxes, there is no other single source of revenue that provides more than 2 to 4% of the town's total revenue. The amount property tax payers are required to pay in support of Shelburne's general government operations, not the school, just the town portion, is primarily a function of three factors. First, what is the level of services desired by the community? Second, the grand list. And third, the common level of appraisal. The level of services desired by the community is a complicated issue with significant differences in opinion. For example, some community members, at least one member of the current select board, and several members of past select boards have questioned the need for 24/7, 365 police department. Like many others here, including most of the select board, I join with what I believe a majority of the residents want on this issue, a full-time department. And that's what we have. In general, the select board arrives at its level of services decisions with substantial staff and resident input, discussion among the board, and with recommendations from our staff, our excellent volunteer committees, and residents. These items are discussed throughout the year, and in particular, during budget discussions. And then you, the residents, you vote. The majority of our annual property tax payment, 80%, goes to support education funding, and it's not David Connery's fault, David. By the way, David Connery has done spectacular work for this town for a long time. He doesn't just play the flute. "20% stays local in support of municipal government functions, supported by the annual town budget. Roughly speaking, Shelburnites pay if that's a word, Shelburnites, pay $2,000 per every $100,000 of assessed homestead value. So if you own a home that's valued at $500,000, you're paying about $10,000. For each $2,000 of the property tax payment, $400 goes towards the town budget, $1,600 goes to the state education fund. If you own a $500,000 home, your payment in support of 24/7, 365 police services per year is about $500 per year, less than 1 cup of coffee a day. Since 2009, Shelburne property taxpayers have witnessed approximately a 25% increase in total tax payments, property tax payments. That equals to a $430 tax increase per $100,000 of assessed value. For the $500,000 home, that is more than a $2,000 per year increase to your tax bill. Of that $2,000 increase, $250 is associated with the municipal portion. Shelburne's municipal tax rate is among the lowest in Chittenden County. Our education tax rate is closer to the middle of the pack. Shelburne, like every town, relies heavily on property tax revenue. Maintaining and growing our grand list is critical. With higher costs and expenses, every year growth is necessary to hold tax rates in check while still providing the community with the level of services that we demand. Grand list growth is necessary to fund increased cost of services. Over the past decade, Shelburne's grand list has grown on the average of 1.5% per year. This year, our grand list is projected to grow by only 0.5%. The common level of appraisal is a townwide statistic that measures the actual sale price of a home compared to the appraised value of homes. There's an inverse relationship between the CLA and the property tax. As the CLA decreases, your property tax will increase by the same amount to fund the state education system. The common level of appraisal is an indicator of the level at which properties in town are appraised in relation to the actual fair market value. CLA is used to equalize education taxes statewide with the goal of having properties of equal value pay equal amounts of school taxes. Shelburne's CLA is currently resting at 96%. That means for every $100,000 of assessed value in Shelburne, you are taxed by the state of Vermont at a value of $104,000. CLA is a townwide statistic, and it does not account for fluctuations within Shelburne or within any town for neighborhoods, sizes, building types. At some point, and there is a difference of opinion as to when the town should do this, the town will likely need to do a full appraisal. The last full appraisal that Shelburne did, if I remember correctly, was just about the time I came on the board 9 years ago. I think it was done the year before, so it was about 10 years ago. It's a lot of work. I think the select board attended we attended more than 100 meetings that year, and the Board of Civil Authority was at many of those. Voters do not vote on the tax rate. Voters vote on the total expenditure. The final grand list is lodged after town meeting. The best we can do now is give you an estimate based on the estimated grand list growth. The select board's responsible for setting the actual tax rate the end of June, early July, when we are provided with the pertinent information from the state. For our significant expenditures, not surprisingly, our personnel costs, and in particular, running a 24/7, 365 police department is the most significant cost in town. We're a municipal corporation. We have about 50 full-time employees, along with numerous part-time and seasonal ones. Other large cost categories include highway, long-term debt, paving, library, and insurance. In fact, our second largest cost item is running our highway department. Staying on top of road maintenance with shim and overlay work is much more cost-effective in the long run than allowing roads to deteriorate to such a condition that they would require full reclamation. This year, as in the past, our annual paving budget is one of our most significant costs. Now, some might look at police and highway expenditures as costs and nothing but costs. But these costs are also investments. Our police and highway departments are responsible in great part for our standard of living, for our health, safety, and welfare. They are investments in our future. We have a strong police department. We have 13 full-time officers and several part-time ones. Aaron Noble is our new police chief. The department has been called into action in 4 recent high-profile cases. There was a well-publicized situation at Wake Robin where a resident was charged with unregistered possession of ricin and allegedly exposed 3 other residents, or 3 different occasions exposed residents to ricin. Our police department responded to a drug deal gone bad at the mobile home park on Spear Street involving juveniles, drugs, knives, and at least 1 gun. Officers, including Aaron Noble, Josh Flore, and Mike Thomas, exhibited extreme bravery and top-quality police work in an attempted murder matter at Harbor Place when bringing into custody a man who allegedly badly injured a woman with a machete. Last week, a 15-year-old boy residing in Shelburne allegedly issued a threat to CVU, our high school. Chief Noble and his department immediately went into action. There was excellent communication and teamwork between the towns of Heinsberg, where CVU is located, and Shelburne, where this 15-year-old resided. Police chiefs communicated. Our town manager reached out to their town administrator. I reached out to their chair of the select board, and there was immediate cooperation. This and other excellent work continues a long tradition of policing in Shelburne. I would like to acknowledge the hard work and professionalism of past and the present police department. As for our highway department, we have the best maintained roads in Chittenden County. Department's led by Paul Goodrich. He does an incredible job. The team is diligent, responsive, and creative. This year, Paul celebrated his 50th anniversary working for the town. Shelburne Rescue is led by Chief Linda Goodrich, Paul's wife. Shelburne Rescue, while part of the budget, is 100% funded by insurance proceeds and donations. Here in Shelburne, we have life-saving services of trained EMTs, all at no cost to our taxpayers. This is a wonderful feat, one that takes commitment, leadership, and a hardworking and dedicated staff. This is one heck of a family, the Goodrich family, Paul and Linda. Yes, Paul and Linda Goodrich. And John. I'd like to talk about our fund balance. There's the charter language. For years, the Select Board has sought to keep at least 5% of the total budget available as unassigned fund balance. With strong fiscal management this past year, our recent audit showed that our fund balance actually increased by about $50,000 and currently sits at $557,569, which is approximately 6.5% of the total budget. For stormwater costs are large, and they will grow significantly. The town now has mandated responsibilities for Monroe Brook. Our expected costs for stormwater capital improvements start at an estimated $5 million. This does not include the ever-increasing burdens placed on municipalities for the annual maintenance of stormwater infrastructure. Included in the fiscal year 2019 proposed general fund budget is $141,000 for stormwater. Previous budgets never included $141,000 for this. While the number has grown significantly the past few years, it is not enough to fund our obligation. What is not included is the amount Shelburne needs to budget to pay for that $5 million worth of mandatory capital improvements for Monroe Brook. And right now, Monroe Brook is the only impaired waterway in Shelburne. That could change. One of the most pressing challenges ahead for the Select Board and our Stormwater Advisory Committee that the Select Board assembled is to develop a stormwater utility. A stormwater utility is a funding mechanism similar to water, sewer, and other utilities that we already utilize. These utilities charge a fee for services provided. In this case, the service is the control of stormwater runoff through construction, operation, and maintenance of a stormwater system. The town manager can provide more information about this later tonight. And the debate here is not whether Shelburne is responsible for these costly obligations. We are. Our responsibility was mandated by the federal and state government. The problem Shelburne needs to address, and the Select Board has taken steps to do this, is to determine what method is the most appropriate one to address this problem and these costs. For the proposed 2019 budget, this cost, the $141,000, is borne by the property taxpayer. It's possible that by this time next year, there will be a proposal in place so the stormwater program will be off the property taxpayer and placed on the utility rate players. While it's too early to provide an exact figure, the average homeowner in Shelburne, should we proceed in this manner, would likely pay half as much as a member of the utility as to what it would cost if stormwater remained as part of our property taxes. This is a driving reason why a stormwater utility could prove to be the best option for the town. The town manager and the Select Board have been working to address stormwater. We formed the Stormwater Advisory Committee that I just mentioned, an extremely strong group of people, and we've been communicating with them for the past few years. We have held numerous public meetings on this issue. We have worked with South Burling, which has its own stormwater department, and we have had their resident expert come to Shelburne to speak with us on multiple occasions. Currently, we're going forward with an analysis for the development of this utility. 2 years ago, we entered into a contractual relationship with South Burlington for stormwater management. This partnership earned the town of Shelburne national recognition for innovative solutions to tackling stormwater responsibilities. And this is due to the excellent work of Town Manager Joe Colangelo and our Water Quality Superintendent, Chris Robinson. They're the ones who got ahead of this. Until 4 years ago, this issue was not addressed by the Select Board. When Joe joined us as town manager, he insisted that we work to face this major concern, but the work's far from complete. If we go forward with the utility, ratepayers will pay based on a more equitable funding mechanism that will take into account their contribution to stormwater runoff, along with other variables. How a stormwater utility is adopted, if it is adopted in Shelburne, will be a very significant issue. It could very well be the most important financial issue this coming year for our town. I urge you all to read up on this, to attend meetings. The board has been, and I'm confident will be, interested in arriving at the best solution for this. Your input could go a long way. So please, please, get involved. As for the major drivers, as always, there's major drivers. The proposed budget calls for a higher tax rate increase than usual, but it could have been higher. At least one on the board argued to spend more. There are key drivers in this budget, though, that are beyond the Select Board's control. For the first time, the budget has included costs that has never before been included in a town budget. The 4 new drivers are a new Quint, a new fire truck the fire chief and the fire department asked for and that the voters approved. Costs relating to the new municipal campus. I'm referring to the new library and the renovated town hall. What I just discussed in regard to stormwater management demands, new cost. And then we entered into a new 3-year collective bargaining agreement with our police and dispatch employees, which was approved in September 2017. Each of these items have been or will be addressed in this presentation. First, the Quint, a major expenditure this year and going forward. This item was requested by the fire chief and who told us that it was necessary for the fire department. It was placed on the ballot and it was voted on and passed. The purchase price, approximately $1 million. This proposed budget also includes debt service for the new municipal campus, the new library, also placed on the ballot, also approved by the voters. The approved bond was $6.5 million. Budget also includes the stormwater costs and the included costs relating to the new collective bargaining agreement. Typically, Shelburne's tax increases have been approximately 3%. Across Vermont this year, proposed increases are larger. Shelburne is no different. This year, our estimated municipal tax rate increase is going to be approximately 8%. The anemic grand list growth I showed you earlier is another driver for the increase. Had the town enjoyed more development, residences, and commercial development, our grand list most likely would have increased, but that did not happen. In addition, another driver is the reallocation of revenue relating to the water tower from the town's general fund to the water fund. Just a short while ago, 100% of the revenue, almost $100,000, went to the town. The current budget has 40% going to the town and 60% going to the water fund. Next year, the proposed budget has 20% going to the town and 80% to the water fund. The impact of this revenue sharing change is the property taxpayer pays more and the water user pays less. Last year at town meeting, I explained that negotiations between the town and the police union, the New England Benevolent Police Association, who negotiate on behalf of Shelburne's police officers and dispatch, would start days after that last meeting. Negotiations for union contracts are among the most important functions of the select board and of the town manager. It's critical to have people on the select board who can understand employment issues as well as financial concerns, who have been involved with and understand contract negotiations, who have a certain level of sophistication. With benefits, the budget for the police and dispatch is $2.4 million. In negotiating new terms, significant policy decisions had to be made, particularly with the impact of health care costs. Due in part to health care costs, and in particular, the division of expenses between the town and the union, this CBA negotiation was the most difficult negotiation that the town and the union has faced in my 9 years on the board. Negotiation led to mediation. This year, the town was represented at the mediation by the town manager, by former select board member John Kerr, and me. I'd like to take a moment here to thank John Kerr for his outstanding service to the town while serving as a select board member. He was not only quite capable of understanding and analyzing the financial implications of the many provisions of the agreement, he conducted himself throughout the process with thoughtfulness, compassion, and tenacity when required. It was an honor to work alongside John during the mediation, and it was a pleasure serving with him during his tenure on the board. John, thank you. As for mediation, it's a good sign because the town and the union were able to work cooperatively together. As a result of fair and balanced yet difficult negotiations, the Select Board was successful in reaching an agreement under extremely trying circumstances, an agreement that has and will continue to benefit our town. Some of the details are the guaranteed annual increases for police officers and dispatchers in the new collective bargaining agreement is 3% over the next 3 years. This percentage is a slight reduction from the past two agreements. Also, the Select Board and employees of the police and dispatch departments were able to agree on a 3-year step down in the amount the town funds for employee health insurance premiums. The new agreement also includes a physical fitness requirement and an incentive program for our police officers. We also agreed to a program for mandatory counseling for any police officer or dispatcher involved in a deadly shooting or similar type of incident. This is to ensure our employees receive the help they need and that they do not return to work too early. This new provision should prove beneficial to the employee, to the department as a whole, and to the public. I've been involved in the last 4 CBAs. I can tell you without question, this was the hardest one, and I applaud the representatives from not just the town, but from the police union. This year's budget also includes a few other important items for our police department. As a threshold matter, I want to encourage all of you to contact Chief Aaron Noble and take a tour of our police facilities so you can see for yourself what they look like. I understand that Chief Noble is more than willing to show you around. This budget includes funds to update the locker room, the evidence storage room, and the officers' room, all long overdue renovations. This budget also includes money in support of the community outreach program. You might have heard about this. It's been in the Burlington Free Press and on some of the TV stations lately. This program is jointly shared by 6 Chittenden County communities. With guidance of the Howard Center, licensed social workers are embedded with the police department to assist officers when responding to issues with individuals who are experiencing mental health problems. Police officers are not specifically trained for mental health related situations like licensed social workers are. At times, first contact with a uniformed, armed police officer might not be the best method for resolving the situation and helping the person in distress. We thank our Social Services Committee for their excellent work, guidance, and support for this program. We believe this program is worth funding as a pilot program, and if the evidence suggests it is beneficial, future select boards will have the opportunity to continue Shelburne's involvement. This budget also reflects a new program for our volunteer fire department. The amount of mandatory training and time commitment it takes to be a volunteer firefighter is significant. For years, most select board members have been aware that at some point, Shelburne will have to move into a paid fire department. Charlotte did this a while ago when they hired one full-time officer. With the goal in mind of extending the life of a 100% volunteer fire department as far into the future as possible, the fire department, and I'm tipping my cap to them for this, suggested a unique and innovative proposal that the Select Board unanimously endorsed. For the purpose of ensuring daytime coverage starting in fiscal year 2019, we will pay volunteer fire department people to hang out at the station during the day. A few months ago, there was a house fire in the village. To show you how important it is to have people right here, that house was saved, and credit was given because we had John Goodrich present at the town offices at that time leading a fire drill for staff. So with staff's recommendation, the select board determined that the additional $14,500 involved and included in this year's budget was money well spent. I'd like to talk a little bit about our long-term debt. Shelburne, like all Vermont municipalities, issues debt as approved by voters to finance projects, usually local infrastructure projects. It's how we pay for our more expensive items. This graph shows the town's debt payments through 2026. The blue bar represents all existing general fund debt. It does not include water and wastewater debt. The red approximately symbolizes new debt obligations for the Quint. The green bar on top represents obligations based on the new municipal campus, which most people refer to as the new library. The fiscal year 2020 budget will be hit hardest by these debt pressures. In fiscal year 2023, we should see a significant ease once some of our past obligations are retired. Now, some budget items are beyond select board control. Some are voted in by the people, often requested by certain departments, such as the fire department requesting a quint, or for the new library. Others are required by statute, such as stormwater. Others the result of union negotiations, as with the CBA. This table demonstrates that the fiscal year 2019 budget would have had a half-cent estimated tax rate increase compared to the 3.1 cent increase if you subtract out the voter-approved debt for the Quinton Library project in addition to the stormwater program. And in other words, minus these new obligations, which we never had before, we are almost level funded. I've been on the select board for 9 years. I've been elected 3 times, each time for 3 years. For the past 4 years, I've been elected by my fellow select board members to serve as chair of the board. Before that, I served as a year on the Planning Commission. It's been a large commitment of time and energy. 3 years ago, I promised my wife that I would not run again, and I am honoring that promise. I wish the board, the next board, the best of luck. I have worked with and interacted with amazing people. Thank you to past and current fellow select board members. As you know, it's often a challenging and thankless job. Thank you to staff. You have made serving on this board much easier in Shelburne. We are blessed with an incredible staff. I want to say thanks to Town Manager Joe Colangelo. Joe, thank you for your professionalism, your skills, your ability, your humor, and your significant accomplishments as serving as town manager. Thank you to Ann Jander, our Director of Administration, for her expertise and proficiency in addressing so many aspects of town government. Thank you to the best finance director in the state, Peter Frankenberg. Thank you to Ted Nelson, who resuscitated our town assessing office to turn it into a well-respected and responsive department. Thank you to Dean Pierce, head of planning and zoning. If you ever want to know who the smartest person in the room is, look at Dean. Thank you to our clerk's office, our entire finance department, our police, highway rescue, fire departments. Thank you to the temporary ethics committee, to Richie Berger, Mike Regan, Roger Price, Kathy Brooks, David Connery, Tom Little, Tom and Jane Zanotti, Bruce Lissman, Kathy Brooks for their outstanding commitments to our town. Thank you to our water, sewer, recreation, and library departments. If I inadvertently forgot to thank someone, I'm sorry. Thank you all, to all residents who chose to be involved in a positive way. Thank you to Rick Bissett, our poet laureate, simply an amazing poet, an inspiring teacher, and a person who always put Shelburne first. In particular, I want to thank the volunteers of this town, those who serve the town, many of whom serve on our committees, boards, and commissions. It is our volunteers who are the backbone of our community. It's vodka. A special thank you to the woman I love, Nora, who has done so much for our family while I have spent between 40 and 80 hours per week, almost every week, each of the last 4 years while serving as chair. To you, Shelburne residents, I embrace and thank the vast majority of you. In 2016, in response to the railway facility being built in the heart of the town, the Select Board received a petition signed by 1,000 people with one direction. We, the undersigned residents of Shelburne, hereby request that the Select Board use any and all means possible to relocate this project. Since then, the consensus of the electorate has been to stay the course. As I leave the Select Board, I want you to know that I have honored the commitment you asked for. For 9 years, every decision, every action I've ever taken on this board has been based on staff and community input, research, and serious deliberation made in what I believe to be in the best interests of the town. I have had no financial or personal interest in any decision. I have given you the best I can give. I wish the town I love, where my wife and I call home and have raised our son, where one of our daughters, her husband, and 2 grandkids live. I wish you the best. It has been an honor serving you.
Please don't push my pen. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Gary, for that thorough presentation. On Article 5, which is the town budget, as Gary described it, the general fund budget, are there any questions or comments from the floor? Yes, sir. And when you, please introduce yourself before making your comment or asking your question.
I have 2 questions. One, I just want to get some assurance that this town has the dual controls that other towns seem to lack when it comes to budgeting and financial controls. And the other question I had, Gary, when you were talking about establishing a stormwater utility, you indicated that by doing so, unless I heard me wrong, your voice was a little weak tonight, that it would cost about half as much as doing it through just real estate taxes, as far as, let's say, the Monroe book compared to Waterway. Did I mishear that?
That's correct. First question, in regard to budgeting and controls, our auditor's report indicates that the town does have excellent controls. So we're very careful about that. That being said, there is room for improvement. And where we're very fortunate is Peter Frankenberg is well on top of these things. And we always want to make sure there's 2 people involved at least. And any time there's any expenditure of funds, anytime you have writing a check. In regard to your second question, you are correct. That's what I did say. And there's a reason for it. And the reason is that if we do a stormwater utility, the taxes are borne by everyone in town, not just the taxpayers. There are certain buildings in town that are tax exempt, for example. They would be contributing in a stormwater utility. There is a different division. There's a lot of factors that come into play. How you set up the stormwater utility. For example, South Burlington set up a stormwater utility, and their residences, I believe, as of a year ago, every residence paid, I think it's $200 per year for the stormwater utility. And then commercial buildings pay a different amount. It has to do with the impact of stormwater runoff that each building or property contributes. And then some equitable mechanism is used to allocate it among everyone. That is an area, Bruce, that the next select board is going to have to determine what is the best way of doing it. There's more than one method. Different communities do it different ways. South Burlington got way ahead of the game within the state of Vermont, and we got ahead of the game as far as maintenance is concerned by entering into such an innovative contract that Joe led in order to address that. But how it's going to work next year, you'll look at these people and a couple of others to see how the mechanism is going to work. It could be different ways. It's a big number. It's potentially going to get bigger should another waterway be designated impaired. So it's a legitimate question.
Any other questions on the budget presentation? Seeing none, that will take us to Article number 6. You've seen this many years previously. Shall the town raise by taxes $30,000 for the purpose of obtaining options and/or the acquisition of lands or the rights in land which would preserve open space and natural resources, any unexpended portion of such sum being placed in the open space fund? And the open space fund balance is currently $171,154. So on Article 6, Gary, do you have a presentation on that? For a quick one?
It'll be very short. Recently, we have spent $150,000 on the open space, from the open space fund, to be utilized to help conserve over 150 acres at Bar Farm property. We had originally allocated that a year ago, but there were some issues with that that went through this year. Our $150,000 the purchase price of $750,000. In our annual town report, you can see that the balance for the open space fund is currently at $171,154. I think the select board universally supports the continued use of public funds to help conserve lands in Shelburne.
Are there any questions on Article 6 from the floor? Seeing, yes. Cullen, can you get the mic? Cullen, could you please wait? There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And please introduce us.
Hi, I'm Lois Lynch and live in the village. What's being done to ensure that people who own these properties or who purchase a property that is part of this system are complying with stipulations attached to the property's condition as a saved resource?
Gary? I think we got a question comparable to that a year ago about just that.
Is Gail here, by the way? Gail out there? Okay, what we often do as a town when we participate in one of these programs in a purchase is we work together with a land trust, a conservation fund, who then monitors what is going on there and reports back to the town and to all interested parties should there be any issues.
Right, and I also think that the testimony we've had in prior annual meetings is that there are some of these land trust programs for particular land that are expressly require access to the public as part of the program, and some that do not require that, depending upon the sensitive nature of the land. I'm not personally familiar with the bar.
That's
the bar
absolutely
problem.
correct. For example, when we were involved in the Zen property maybe 5 or 6 years ago, part of that purchase included making sure that there were trails that could be utilized by the public. And it's something that our open space committee, and we have a very active and strong open space committee, our natural resources board, they very much are in favor and look to include public access when possible. It depends on the property and it depends on the players in the deal.
Yeah, and I think our leadership on the open space committee is not shy about telling the town and the select board if they think it's not being complied with. Anything else on Article 6? If not, Article 7. Article 7, shall the town of Shelburne enter into an agreement for the formation of a union municipal district to be known as the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority for the purpose of providing regional emergency dispatch. And, Gary, are you going to present on this, or is the town manager?
I'm afraid so. No, our town manager, Joe Colangelo, who's been actively involved in this process, will make the presentation.
You're happy to come up here, Joe, or you can do it from the table.
Unless there's a lot of questions. I don't have a formal presentation. I certainly would be happy to answer questions. I've been the select board's appointed representative to the Joint Survey Committee, which is a statutory requirement of putting together a union municipal district, which this is what the form of government here is. That Joint Survey Committee looked at many different forms or types of governments that could operate a Chittenden County regional dispatch center. They figured the outcome of that was a union municipal district was the most appropriate method. Other examples of the union municipal district are Green Mountain Transit, Champlain Water District, Chittenden County Solid Waste District. So there are other examples like that that we have. Again, I know that there's a lot of misunderstanding about what this article is asking. It's an Australian ballot. A yes vote keeps Shelburne on the governing board as decisions move forward. Again, this is the statutory requirement for a startup government. It's a long, kind of drawn out process, and this is the way it works. As I've said publicly a number of times, it is my opinion that voting yes is prudent for the town to continue to have a voice. That's a much different recommendation than saying, should Shelburne join union or regional dispatch? That is a question that cannot be answered right now. The union municipal district, the next step will be to answer a lot of the unknown questions that are still outstanding. I have seen some pieces of evidence such as, well, there's this 70 seconds delay time in the 911 calls and there's no empirical data for that. Well, actually the national consultants analyzed all the data in Chittenden County and developed that number. So that is a factual number. Then there was a question about whether or not Shelburne will save money. Now, it's too early to say definitively, but the first brush is yes, Shelburne will end up saving money through the regional entity. Currently, it costs Shelburne $700,000 to run its dispatch center. We receive in revenue $350,000 to offset that. It's an outstanding question of whether or not Shelburne is paying too much, that $350,000 currently, not enough, or it's just right. And those questions will be answered, and the only way they'll be answered with Shelburne having a voice at the table is to be a member of the governing body. Again, that's a completely separate question than what will come down the line is whether or not Shelburne should pay to receive services from this entity. So just so it's clear, the article is asking whether or not Shelburne will continue on the governing body of this entity. And if there's any questions, I am certainly happy to answer them.
Okay, all right. Mr. Boyd, please introduce yourself and raise your question.
So, with the municipalities that we dispatch for right now, there's 32 if I've heard the number right. A lot of them are in Addison and Grand Isle County. Do they also have the opportunity to become part of this regionalized dispatch?
Yep. So it's a great question. Thank you. So Shelburne, so again, if the question is, does regional dispatching work? The answer is certainly yes, because Shelburne has been a regional dispatching center for 20 or 30 years now. We have proven that regional dispatching works. We are a regional dispatch center that utilizes a contract method. What this Chittenden County Regional Center is, instead of a contract method, it's shared governance. What we're again voting is to have a voice on the governance body. Those agencies, not municipalities, but agencies that we contract, Shelburne currently contracts for agencies in Chittenden County and all the way up north close to the Canadian border. They would still, in the future, be able to contract with the Chittenden County regional entity the same way that they contract currently with Shelburne. But unlike Shelburne, they would not be a voting member like we would potentially be, depending on how Article 7 goes.
So, with that, if we do join this, if they do or do not go themselves, because we've got contracts with them, do we end up paying a penalty when those contracts are breached?
No, there's no penalty clause. That's it?
Did you answer the question?
Yeah, I thought the question was, will we have to pay a penalty? And there's no penalty clause in any of the contracts that we have. Sorry. Did you hear that one that time?
Thank you. Any other questions on Article 7? Seeing none. Thank you, Joe. I think that completes the Select Board presentation on the articles that will be voted on by Australian ballot tomorrow. Is there any other business that the Select Board would like to bring up at this time? You can do anywhere you want, Terry. Grab one of the floating mics.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Story. I'm the vice chair of the board. To add to the very long list of deserving people that Gary thanked, it's time to thank Gary for 9 years of service on the select board. By any measure, that's a notable contribution to the town. And knowing of his love of America's game, baseball, and softball, at the next board meeting, I will propose a donation in recognition of that service to the Bissonnette Little League Scholarship Fund. This fund is used to offer scholarships to kids playing baseball or softball in Shelburne. Currently, the balance of the fund is approximately $800. The proposed donation that I will make at the next meeting will significantly increase that. We thank Gary for his service, and following, my colleague Colleen Parker would like to address you as well. Thank you.
So, 9 years on the board, and countless many other years and hours given to the town of Shelburne in many different capacities. Gary has really embodied a volunteer, and in the true sense of the word. I've been on the board with Gary now for 4 years, and this was actually because at a get-together he said, "Why wouldn't you ever consider being on the select board?" And I was like, I don't know. And he encouraged me to run, and I wasn't the only one. He encouraged Tony Supple to run, and I'm sure he probably encouraged half of you here to run for the select board, because of his love and passion and his belief in how important volunteer work is to how well Shelburne is run. I've learned from Gary at every single meeting, including tonight, where I saw all of his notes for all of his speech was in really large font. And I was like, that's brilliant. And he's like, it's not my first rodeo. I'm like, we know. Some of the things that have impressed me are stories about Gary, was one time when he told me about how he was selling not kids. He was selling kids' toys on Front Porch Forum and in the newspaper, and then donating the proceeds to the Shelburne Food Shelf. Again, every single aspect, every single example has always been to give to the people and residents of Shelburne. He, in addition to just being an amazing leader and being to the town and also to the rest of the select board, is every single time a new select board member came on, he recommended that we go and explore and investigate every single department. So go and talk to all the members of the department for the rec department. Go and see the fire department. We were, and Tony Supple I don't think she's here tonight, but she could vouch for the fact that we were crawling under the Bay Harbor Bridge where there were dead raccoons so that we could see for ourselves the damage to the Bay Harbor Bridge. And he ran every single meeting with proper protocol, following Robert's Rules of Procedure, but still interjected levity and humor and would break into song and tell jokes. And when little kids would come and speak in the microphone, he would always say something that made them laugh and smile and be a little bit more at ease in front of a room full of adults. Wearing Yankees jerseys and peeling off each jersey of different teams that he supports, all the way down to his son's teams and his old alma mater, I believe. Yeah. Gary's never afraid to fight. He will always step up to the fight that needs to be fought, and even when it's challenging. But when it was time to listen, he was always ready to listen. There was plenty of times where we would go back and forth, but I never felt disrespected. He's honorable, principled, with limitless energy and unparalleled passion and love for Shelburne. The only thing that it's eclipsed by is his love for Nora, which is legendary. And so I know that we're losing him and his wealth of knowledge for her gain. On the other hand, if he's around too much and you'd like to send him back, we definitely could use his advice. But in general, just thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much. In my notes, I have a slot here for brief updates from Joe Colangelo on the library project and on stormwater project. Is that something we still want to do now, or do you want to defer that? Okay. And then we're going to move on to the Champlain Valley School District budget presentation.
Sorry, I can start with stormwater, and I'll maybe just answer any extra questions. Actually, Gary did a pretty phenomenal job of answering the question, which had all the information I was planning on saying. So I don't know if there's any questions coming up, but like Gary said, for the next select board, looking at developing and maybe even proposing a stormwater utility to Shelburne is probably going to be the most significant item on their to-do list. So this will be hopefully an item that there's a lot of coverage about over the next 12 months. If there's any questions right now, I'm certainly happy to answer them. No?
No?
Okay. And then I was going to update the slide, but you can take my word for it. The next one has a picture of the library. The project is going through the DRB process right now. It is at least anticipated that construction could start as early as this summer. Kevin is here, our library director as well. If there are any questions about the library project, I am happy to answer them now, or other staff members as well.
Anything on that now? If you have questions, you know where to go to get them answered.
Thank you.
And I would call on Dave Connery, the chair of the Champlain Valley School District, to make a presentation on the proposed CVSD budget and to ask to join him anyone else from the board that he wishes.
Can you have Joe? Do you mind just paging through for me? Okay. All right. Just because of the angle, let me just bring up the presentation for myself here. I thank everyone who is still here and is here at this late hour. I tried really hard to go first because I'm speaking right into the microphone. It's just not working. How's that? Is that better? Okay. Trying to do 6 things here at once. Let me just concentrate on this and get this up. All right. Okay. I think I'll do it this way. Should be all right. Okay. So we're going to go over a quick budget presentation for the Champlain Valley School District, which will go through the state of the district, assessment, enrollment, the budget, and tax implications in the articles. I know Article 11 is the last article that's listed in here, but it's the most important one, and I hope that all of you will stay to the end to hear it. If we can go to the next page. Back in 2016, we had a vote to consolidate the districts of the CSSU into one consolidated district that represents Charlotte, Heinsberg, Shelburne, St. George, and Williston. This encompasses all the 6 schools, including the 2 in Williston and 1 in every other town, plus CVU. We now have one school district that has 3,867 students. And I always wanted to ask Gary, how many staff members are there in the town of Shelburne for $6 million?
We have 50 full-time employees.
50 full-time employees. So for $76 million, we have 900 employees. So I just wanted to put that in there for perspective. And with 3,867 students, we are the largest school district in the state. On the right side of this slide is the mission statement for our district, which I always say this, and there's a lot of mission statements that are out there for the companies that we have worked for and do work for that are sort of placeholders to fill a requirement. I really feel like this mission statement really encompasses the job that our educators and administrators do for our kids. Nowhere on here does it say read, write, and do arithmetic. Really what this mission statement helps guide our kids to do is become great citizens and contributing members to our society. And that's evidenced every day that I get a chance to come into the school and see the kids and teachers in action. This year's budget we started working on this year's budget in November or October. We had a large group of community members who did help us. We had some parents, teachers and support staff, and 12 school board members for the Consolidated Board. For Shelburne, we had 2 budget buddies who were residents that came to the meetings. One was Kate Cross. Kate was here. Did Kate leave? Yep, Kate left. The other is Barbara Martin, who I think is in the back right there, waving her hand. Barbara is also running for the open seat for school board. So she'll be on the ballot tomorrow. Is that 2 or 3 years? 3 years, okay. Yep. Lots of great things going on in our schools. There's some text here, talks about the different things. 2 great days that you want to see good things about our school. Go to CVU graduation and go to Shelburne Community School graduation, middle school graduation here. Last year I attended the CVU graduation where Bernie Sanders spoke, and I truly believe that he was the 5th best speaker there that day. Because the kids that speak about their experiences in the past and moving on to college, the graduates they're incredible humans, and it's great to be a part of that school. Assessments for K-8 and also for 11th grade, students are now taking the SBAC. This is I think we're in the 2nd or 3rd year of SBAC results at the school. In all of these cases, you see that in English language arts, Shelburne students and CVU students are exceeding the Vermont averages. In math, it's the same, with the exception of a blip on grade 6. Scott Sevo, one of our new co-principals, talked about this at the PTO meeting, where this is probably an issue with misalignment of curriculum with the assessment, which is something that happens with an assessment that's only a couple of years old. But I know that my daughter, who is in 7th grade, and my son, who is in 5th grade, when I see the difference between the homework that my 5th grader takes home versus my 7th grader, they're pushing more and more concepts down lower and lower. And so at least for math, as an engineer, it's the thing I concentrate on. The curriculum is extremely rigorous, and kids are learning really advanced concepts at an earlier age, because the concepts they need to move on in life are further more complex. The next slide is science assessments, where, again, generally above average for the state. The numbers of, you look at the numbers of proficiency being at 50%, 50% are at proficient or above. You'd like to see that higher. And again, Scott Sevo explained to me that is a misalignment of curriculum with assessment, but we are working to keep our science programs rigorous and improve them. Enrollment trends. I really feel like Shelburne has sort of been hovering around this, mid 700 number for a long time. We had a few ups and downs. For next year, we're forecasted to have a pretty decent increase of 1.8%, which is, what do we have, an extra 13 students coming in? Let's hope they're not all in one grade. That's always the challenge right there. But again, more students means an ability to spread more cost out over a larger group. Move to the next one, class sizes. We're staying well below the Vermont education quality standards. With you can see the Shelburne average class sizes for K-8 right there, and then compare those to the ranges across the whole CVSD district. we'll move on to board budget goals. Those of you who were at, or maybe we didn't talk about this at dinner, but when the governor gave his speech at the start of the year, he laid out some goals for schools and put pressure on budgets to limit budget growth to no more than 2.3% and to limit spending per equalized pupil to no more than 2.5%. And those were all tied to economic indicators within the state. At the same time, while managing costs, we also need to meet educational standards. So we did go through and look at each individual school building relative to many different metrics, which were students, the one we always talk about, students to teacher, class size, but then also the number of administrators to students, guidance counselors to students, essential arts, which is art, PE, music, and I'm missing one. Am I missing one of them? All my did I miss one, Russ? Art, PE, music. What are the other essential arts? I feel like I'm missing one. Theater. Okay. Maybe I'm not. Okay. Furthermore, we also need to address all the different ways kids learn and different needs that kids have in the school. So that is a further need for us. And then we did have a budget forum in mid-November at CVU where we had a general presentation and then we broke out by town. And it was really heartening to see that it was one of the more well-attended budget forums that we've had in many years. And we received a lot of input from parents and students on what they wanted to see for offerings and also for cost savings. So we move on to you jumped ahead 2 slides here. Next one. Budget development, there we go. So there are goals that we had to develop the budget from the state, and then there was also some external financial pressures where last year they used some of the education fund to pay down last year's budget and property taxes. That was not available this year, so it put a significant hole in the education fund, which affected yield. We were affected by the health insurance clawback, where the governor mandated and the legislature voted as well to pull back money from school budgets for healthcare costs above the 85% that they wanted to see in all negotiations. We have increases in special education and increased costs in proficiency-based learning and personalized learning plans. We also had internal cost pressures from the salary increases as a result of the contracts negotiations that we had last year, as well as increased bond payments for both Shelburne and Williston construction projects. And I do want to say I'm really happy with how the work turned out on the bond project. Just in this room alone, what did we point out? We had new lighting and the 2 brown members that are running down either side of the beam that's supporting the door. Those are new support beams that are to code so that if it snows a ton on top of this roof and then it rains, we'll still be safe. So the entire bond project and the work was really well done. I don't know how many of you were able to take tours when we did the open house in the fall. But at any time, if there's enough interest, we'll do another tour because it was really well done. So if we come to the budget page, next one, Joe, there we go. So the total budget here is for this year for all 5 towns, for all 3,000 plus students, is $76,838,000 and a cost per equalized pupil of $15,749. This is well below the state threshold where we would be taxed $2 for every dollar that we needed. Some of the factors that go into this 76 million are a savings of $214,000 because of consolidation. A lot of this was reorganizing labor costs that oversee functions that touch all of the different buildings in all the different towns, most notably facilities. We did have an increase in salary and benefits due to the contract negotiations, increased special ed and student services. We also made a significant investment in technology and innovation. This cost, however, is a cost associated with consolidation so that we could create a single network and the hardware to support that network for one network for the entire school district. Prior to this, we had a network inside each one of these buildings, and so a teacher who was in Shelburne and went to professional development in Williston couldn't log into that computer system there and access their files. So while this is an expense here, this will save us a lot of money going forward. So those numbers that I just went through go into total operating costs. So those are increasing year over year to 1.2%, with the two new bond votes, two new bond costs coming on. Of the total 2.3% increase that we have, debt service is 1.1 percentage points of that. So total educational spending on this $76 million budget is only up 1.2%, which was I think is a pretty significant success based on significant cost pressures. So if we look at how the tax rate is calculated, I do want to say that some of these numbers here are changing and are in flux and have been adjusted, but also there's a new revenue and education funding bill that's before various committees in the legislature, and so they haven't recalculated the yield number. And I really feel like if they did that, based on all of the budgets across the state that are coming in, the yield number would be more favorable. But if you take the budget expenditures, you subtract out revenue for special education and other subsidized costs, you divide it by our equalized pupils, which is 4,127. I know that's different than the 3,500 that we showed you in the earlier page, but that's because certain age students cost more to educate than others. So I think it's a high schooler costs more to educate than a kindergartner. Is that right, Russ? It is. Okay. You think about how kindergartners don't need economics teachers and physics teachers. They mostly just have one primary teacher. So with the statewide yield number, which we show here is 9,800, which this should probably be adjusted more, more towards $10,000. Our district spending adjustment, which is our cost per pupil divided by the yield, comes up with a equalized homestead tax rate of $1.60. So it's dividing those two numbers. The Act 46 consolidation incentive knocks 8 cents off of that. So the equalized tax rate for the district is $1.52 before CLA. So if you look at this increase on the next page and this page right here, in the terms of pennies, 3 cents of our tax rate increase, or 2.3% of it, is an increase in education costs, which is the components of 2.3% that I mentioned before. 5 cents of our tax rate increase goes to the statewide yield calculation. 2 cents of our tax rate increase goes to the fact that last year our consolidation tax incentive was 10 cents and now it's 8. And then CLA varies from town to town, but what I'm trying to point out here is that the complexity of the funding formula and the number of factors that go into the funding formula in order to provide equitable education across the state have a bigger effect on increasing our tax rate this year than actual increased education expenses. So that's a good reason why the legislature is working on new education funding rules. So the next page will show the CLA for the different towns. Shelburne CLA at 95.8, which is, you know, in a pretty decent place, I feel, from an education tax rate standpoint, means that our tax rate is increasing by 7.6%. So your change in taxes per $100,000 will be approximately $111 per 100,000. If you have friends in Williston that are complaining about the tax rate, which is shown here as almost 12%, Williston had a challenge to their CLA, won the appeal, and so their tax rate is now in line with the same increase of all the others. Their increase is around 8.8%. So I did talk about increases per 100,000. These are example tax implications for a $200,000 and a $500,000 home, and then projected costs according to income sensitivity, if that's how you pay your education property taxes. So the next three articles are pretty straightforward. Shall the voters approve the budget for $76 million with a cost per pupil of $15,749 per student? This is an increase of 2.3% year over year, and again, 1.2% of that 2.3 is bond payments for Williston and Shelburne. Article 9, shall we take our fund balance and apply a portion of it to pay down the tax rate for this year? We are still operating the district at a positive, with a positive balance at the end of every operating year, so we still have the ability to apply money and reduce the tax rate. Article 10, Russ Caffrey's favorite article, buses. With this article, we're now buying buses on one article for all the schools. So normally Shelburne would have bought 1 or 2 buses per year. This is for the entire school district to buy 6 new school buses with a long-term plan to replace about 5 to 6 every year. A further twist here is that previously Charlotte had sold all their buses, taken that one-time money, and then contracted out their bus service. In order to make things more uniform, we've terminated that contract with Charlotte, and so now there'll be one centralized transportation operation that will be run for the district, and Charlotte will be included in that. So that's 1 or 2 of the buses, I think, that we're buying. And this last article, Article 11. It's easy to read this and say, oh my gosh, what's happening to the money I voted for my bond? And that's not really true, because when we consolidated, all of the debt that we acquired to do this renovation was then assumed by the whole district. So the good thing for taxpayers is that now, instead of our debt being spread out over the families that are the 700 plus students plus the other residents in town, our debt is now spread out over the entire district that supports 3,400 students. And it's fortunate for us because it reduces our tax payments on this debt. It's unfortunate for others in town because they're paying for a bond that they may not fully see the advantage of. However, at some point in time, they will need renovations in Heinsberg or in other towns, and so we will help chip in for that as well. This specific article is such that when the article was written many, many years ago, or no, only in 2016, sorry. When the article was written, it only said, shall we make renovations to the D and the E wing and the roof? And so here we are in the third year of construction, and we want to put this HVAC system in the C wing. New staff were like, why are you spending money on the C wing? You were only supposed to spend it on the D and the E wing. So as the engineer, I blame this on the lawyers. Hey. I said lawyers, not attorneys. But this is really just a way to cross the T's and dot the I's so that we can properly finish this job and apply $600,000 to fix the HVAC system in the C wing, which was the plan all along. And I think the HVAC system was the story I always told at these meetings, which I thought there was a helicopter landing on the back fields, and it was the HVAC system that was in between the music room and the art room that was making so much noise. So this was a planned thing that needed to happen. Tim Williams and Mike McDonald and Chris Giard and Alan Miller, all those folks on the facilities committee did such a great job managing the project that we did have a positive balance, and we're able to take some of that positive balance and send at least $38,000 of it down the road to Charlotte so that they can fix a boiler that is about to break any day. And then other maintenance at Heinsberg for their roof and other things. So this is really great in the sense that we can share some of this money and address urgent needs elsewhere while still receiving the full benefit of the bond that we had planned. This is nothing but good for Shelburne. And so I encourage everyone to vote yes for this. And if you haven't voted early already, I encourage you to vote tomorrow between 7 and 7. And can I ask them if they have any questions, or do you have to ask them? Are there any questions? Yes, Doug. Oh, here it comes.
Two questions. An equalized student, you said, because there's only 3,800 and change students, but the equalized is like 4,150. Is that because you said high school students count for like 1.1 pupils?
That's right. There's exactly.
Okay. The other part is, so the $9.1 million that Shelburne voted on 2 years ago for the school renovation here, that bond is, and the payments for that is now spread out over 5 towns?
That's correct.
Okay, so in my tax bill, when I'm seeing the amount that might be now for the improvements, the renovation of the school, it's probably only a fifth of what we would have had, or a fourth?
Sort of.
Sorry.
Because there was also a bond vote in, if you look at just the dollars for Shelburne, yes, that's the answer to your question. There was also a bond vote prior to operational consolidation on July 1st of 17 in Williston, and they approved a bond to renovate their school. So we're helping Williston pay for their bond as well.
Oh, so we're about half then, it sounds like.
Right.
Okay, that was it.
Okay. Anything else? Thanks very much. I do want to acknowledge fellow board members Russ Caffrey, who's in the crowd right here, as well as Joan Lennis over here in the corner, who is leaving us after many, many years, and I want to thank her for all of her service. I really appreciate it. You're welcome.
Careful. I don't think that there, by my checklist, there's any other business to come before the town meeting. As a reminder, the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow at the Shelburne Town Center Gymnasium. I'd like to give special thanks to my partner up here, our town clerk, Diana Vachon, for the hundreds of hours of planning and organizational work that she does with her staff and the volunteers that will be at the polling places tomorrow. I'd now entertain a motion to recess this meeting until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, Tuesday, March 6th. So moved. It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We'll stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. for Australian balloting on the town meeting articles. Thank you. Gary?
Thank you.